Yes, Mr. Chair, members, Roxanne Miller, representing the Mayor, City Council, City of San Jose. We were pleased to be here today and witness the discussion and the tremendous priority that you in the legislature are placing on this issue. We certainly want to acknowledge Senator De Leon's effort in the proposal, and also Darrell Steinberg, and the knowledge to be able to craft the appropriate legislation. I think we're also obviously very keenly aware that this is an issue that transcends so many lives in this state, and it touches all of our lives because as a priority, this has got to be at the very top of the list, to deal with this issue in a compassionate and understanding way. In San Jose, our city council certainly has exercised leadership in the first housing concept, and we know that it works. We know that it can be effective. So we look forward to working with you this session. We know we can come up with solutions that will not leave anyone behind, and looking for supportive housing and also supportive services. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Leno, members of the committee. My name is Chris Jensen. I work for Resources for Independent Living here in Sacramento. We are also members of Californians for SSI and part of the Health and Human Services Network. And I just want to begin by saying I think this is the first time I've been in this room and I didn't have a 1 or 2 minute countdown clock, so it makes me feel really good. So thank you for that. Just to start off with, our services, we provide services to people with disabilities and low income, and housing is the #1 issue that people come to see us about. And I just want to mention a couple of things based on the first panel. If a person is living on SSI, that's their sole income, and they go into a shared housing situation, their income is substantially cut. So that the savings they get because they're sharing the rent is offset by the cut in the amount of money that they receive. So it's really a difficult sell to get people into shared housing if they're living on SSI. I also wanted to indicate that in alignment with what the gentleman from Berkeley, the second-year law student, said, the Department of Justice put out a position paper in regards to criminalizing homelessness. They said it is unconstitutional and it violates their 8th Amendment, which is undue hardship, because sleeping is a human need. It's a body need that we all have. And when a locality doesn't have enough housing or beds for everyone that is experiencing homelessness, it is unconstitutional to criminalize them, to cite them, to incarcerate them, and to provide that penalty. So that needs to be looked at. There are some cities that, as we heard, still have the criminalization of homelessness, those ordinances. I think that, I don't know what the state can do about that, but I think it's important to weigh in because it's just wrong. It's just flat out wrong. People have a right to rest. I also wanted to mention that, the state does have a housing trust fund, so you might want to look at funding that. That might be something to look into. And in going forward, I like, what Darrell Steinberg and Pro Tem De Leon's idea is great. I would suggest you invite affordable housing developers into the conversation because they can really tell you what it costs to build affordable housing. And I don't think we had that here today. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to continuing discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen.
Good afternoon, members. Kieran Savage, National Alliance on Mental Illness of California, NAMI, California. And I wanted to thank you for your time on this important issue. We think it's crucial for our membership. We represent individuals and family members who are impacted by serious mental illness. And just wanted to add a couple of things. There was a brief mention today of prevention of homelessness, and we think that's really important. And one thing specifically that we think we should be putting at least a little bit of focus on is discharge planning. So thinking about when people are in the hospital, people with mental illness are in the hospital and are in emergency departments, as well as when people are leaving our jails and prisons, what can we be doing to ensure that people who are leaving those settings have a place to live? And I think that's something that we see is often missed. and that's a real opportunity to make sure that people don't go back to a situation where they are homeless. And the other thing is the issue of siting concerns, which is very real. We've been dealing with it not in the context of housing, but in the context of psychiatric hospitals recently in several communities that unfortunately we're just not able to site those projects and therefore will go without those facilities. And one of the things that I think goes hand in hand with prevention is stigma reduction. And I think to the extent we can see our stigma reduction projects as broad-based and not only the individual level, but also the community level, that when we're talking to people about what is mental illness and what is substance use disorders, that will help us in the long run with being able to move these projects forward and removing some of the myths and some of the fears that people have. The two other quick things to add, one is thinking about outreach and engagement and the peer-based models that we have that are really effective for that, and the panelists spoke eloquently about that and why that's important and why that's effective for getting people into housing and services. The other thing that the same panelists spoke really well about that we wanted to highlight also is the importance of integrating and co-locating our mental health and our substance use disorder services and also placing those in housing, because we know how many people are struggling with both and really need those services to be in the same place at the same time. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Savage.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Senators. Joe Michael for Equality California. Thank you for putting on this hearing and taking time to address these really complex and important issues. We appreciate that. And I wanted to highlight, it's come up a little bit during public comment, the issues that are specific to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community and how homelessness affects our community in particular, and even more specifically, LGBTQ youth. So just to say a little bit more about that for you all. Youth who are LGBTQ are disproportionately homeless. They're overrepresented in the homeless population in California and beyond. And we've figured out that a lot of the reasons for that are discrimination and lack of social acceptance in the home, in schools, and in the broader community. And that's what's led to the higher rates of homelessness, both among LGBT youth and among LGBT adults. So we want to highlight in particular how that affects transgender youth and youth who are of color as well as LGBT. So for example, in Los Angeles and San Francisco, LGBTQ youth represent up to 40% of the population of homeless youth. That's a significant number. More broadly, LGBT youth experience longer periods of homelessness, higher rates of previous trauma and abuse, and worse physical and mental health than their non-LGBT peers. Programs that specifically target LGBT youth, which is what we significantly would recommend here, are either absent in some parts of the state or are present and are successful, but they are operating beyond capacity and have long waiting lists and are not able to serve all of the youth that they should be serving. Addressing the critical need for these expanded services that specifically target LGBT folks and LGBT youth in particular is a top priority for Equality California. It was a topic of discussion at both of our recent Fair Share for Equality convenings. And we just want to make sure that this issue is highlighted and that it's something that continues to be a part of these discussions as they move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michael.
How you doing? My name is Donnell Boyd, and I am a representative of Coalition on the Homeless and the Hospitality House, and I'm also homeless. And we as homeless people, we know California have problems, but the problems that California have cannot be solved by skeptics and cynics. We need senators that's going to get out there and fight for the people. One time I was walking down Golden Gate in San Francisco, and I saw a senator, and I said, "Senator, what are you going to do for the black community?" And he said, "I'm going to do all I can to help y'all out." But a couple of days ago, he just got sentenced to 5 years in jail. Now, our community is messed up. People can say what they want to say. The black community is messed up, and we need all the help that we can get. The homeless community is messed up, sleeping under bridges, rats running all around, sleeping under tents, tarps, putting us in warehouses with mats on the floor. That is no way to live if you consider yourself the leading nation of the world. So all I ask is for y'all to reach out and start fighting for us that's living on the street, because we living, dying, and sleeping on the streets. We in the rain is messed up. Everybody keeps saying we're going to do studies, we got to look into this, we ain't got enough money. But the people out on the streets, we looking like, hey, we need help. We need help. And then we down, we as low as we can get. Then here come the cops harassing us. Cops do not harass middle class and upper middle class people. When I walk down the street, they look at me like I'm some type of enemy, like I'm out to do something wrong. And there's all this type of negative vibes that's going on in California. It has to stop. And we all have to come together and try to solve these problems. And thank y'all for listening to me.
Well, we appreciate your being here. Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Colleen Rebecca. I work at St. Anthony's. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again. Senator Leno's been by for lunch, so you guys are all welcome anytime. Anytime you're in San Francisco. We're here today around two issues that are important to us here at St. Anthony's, both SSI and homelessness. I want to focus on homelessness because there are a few things that were mentioned in the presentation parts of the hearing that I want to discuss. First is sort of this myth that there is a significant population among the homeless that just simply want to be homeless and are sort of lazy and want to be dropped out of society. I think that that's a myth that's really damaging. And in my 20 years as a social worker, I've never seen anyone who meets that criteria. A lot of times people who may seem to be service resistant may be resisting services that are simply inappropriate to them. They may have been in a shelter and they're gay, and the way they were treated in the shelter means they feel like they do not want to go back to that place. That's one example. If the services that you're providing are inadequate or that you're offering are inadequate for a person's life, then that person is going to resist. And it's the job of outreach workers to rebuild that trust again and to try to improve the services. We do this in San Francisco and it works. And this resistance is often mislabeled. I also want to say that the criminalization and housing have to go hand in hand as a solution to homelessness. Ending criminalization and providing housing, not one or the other. There have been a lot of arguments that I've heard in this building around, well, we don't really need to worry about criminalization. We're just going to focus on housing, and really that's the only thing that we need to think about. That is a self-serving and misguided argument. And the federal government has put that forward as its priority, that both must happen, and are making our continuums of care demonstrate that they are reducing criminalization. The state should be reinforcing that, and that's going to be the end of what I'm going to say, because I know my friends are going to say more on behind. So thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Miguel Carrera. So I'm working for the Coalition on Homelessness. So I want to share with you guys a little bit about what I hear from people who is presenting about homelessness. I am formerly homeless. I have 22 years being out of a homelessness situation. And I believe that the people who is saying the homeless people, they don't want to do nothing, is wrong, because I have a crazy life. I was in the streets. And then I have the opportunity, my organization, the Coalition of Homeless, give me a hand, I give you the other hand, and wake up, and starting working then, and starting being volunteer in the coalition, and then doing the best I can for my life, and doing the best I can for anybody who is in need. So when we say homeless people don't want to get or want to receive services, that's not true. Second thing, so homeless people is smart. Like you, like me, like anybody else, who is human being. One thing we need, compassion and understanding us really deeply, that when we need the support, you guys have to provide it. And we can't get out from the streets. People talking about right here, about mental health and all of these issues. I hear every single detail what they're talking about. One of the things, I never say, but I want to say right now, I have a PTSD. Why? Because I was being homeless and being in the streets and using drugs and being in this whole crazy situation. I started to overcome. Since 22 years ago, I started to take a therapist, and I still continue to take a therapist because I need them, because I feel like I don't have only one problem. I have 1,000 problems, and I have to work in one day at a time and one issue of the problem to build myself and build and helping other people to build themselves to care out for the situation. And I really want to ask everybody right here and in these chairs to supporting us, to supporting the bill, the right to rest. You know, because it's really important for homeless people at least to resting and don't come the police every single time at 3 o'clock in the morning and pushing down and putting water when these poor folks is sleeping in the streets. This is not cool. This is racist.
Thank you, sir.
This is disrespect. Please, please, put more attention and more money to homeless people. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sharon Noel. I'm Policy and Advocacy Coordinator for the Homeless Youth Alliance in San Francisco. And I really want to thank you for holding this hearing, but I also really wanted, as other people have done too, address the issue of criminalization. In San Francisco, we have more laws against quality of life, anti-homeless laws than in any other county or city in the state of California. And the effects of that are so damaging and so real. Like you stated earlier, in San Francisco, we do have a housing crisis. Being able to find enough places to house people is becoming, and has been a very real and hard issue to overcome. And in the meantime, criminalization is not a solution. It is not an answer. In the Haight, since the 2011 enactment of the sit-lie law in San Francisco, over 38 of our youth have died. And there's many reasons to this, but they're gone. And they didn't have a house, they were young. And I'm shaking with what I hear and the stories that are told to me and from our youth, from our kids out in the street about being out in the rain all night long and trying to sit down because they're tired, and having a task force of police officers that are dedicated to nothing but quality of life issues in the Haight track them down and keep moving them along. If we're going to talk about homelessness, we really need to start talking more about criminalization, because it's real and it's killing people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kelly Cutler. I am a human rights organizer with the Coalition on Homelessness in San Francisco. And I am going to be reiterating about the criminalization of homelessness. It's a big issue, and I think some people wonder, they're wondering why we're focusing so much on this. And really, it's because it's a core issue. As a social worker, now we're having to initially dealing with different legal issues and citations and all these things, instead of trying to get people into housing, and instead of trying to, well, we're also doing that as well, but this is what we're having to deal with. It's coming on, but also it just, financially, it doesn't make sense. There was the study that came out of Los Angeles where there was $100 million going towards homelessness. And they had to break down, identify where that went. And they found that up to 87 million of that 100 million was going towards police and enforcement. And that really needs to be going towards actually helping people and not towards like moving along and things like that. The, totally lost my last one. But also with the criminalization, it's where I can speak to San Francisco specifically, where we have one shelter bed for every 5.5 homeless individuals that are on our streets, and over 800 people on our wait list. But then it's against the law to sit or lie down. You can literally go to jail for that. Then they'll go and they'll give a ticket for $100. Okay, if they don't go to court, then it goes up to $300. Does anyone really expect folks that are struggling so much already to be able to pay these? It just doesn't make sense. The whole thing doesn't make sense. And so really we need to refocus, and it's just unjust, and it's how it's treating people and what we're seeing now. And I've been doing street outreach in San Francisco for almost 15 years. What we're seeing now is stunning. It's very different. The amount, like where people are getting older and the medical issues that we're seeing. There was one man in particular that just really stuck with me, where we were talking and he lifted up his shirt and he had a colostomy bag. And then he'd just come out, and he was let out from the hospital, and he had surgery on his stomach, and it's swollen. These are the folks that we're running into on the street, that we're encountering. And really just, and the service providers are really trying hard. You know, the folks on the front line are really, really working hard and just trying to be able to survive themselves. And yeah, and at the same time, there's sweeps going on, you know, and people's wheelchairs and things are getting thrown away. So
Thank you for your good work, Ms.
Thank you.
Cutler. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Juliana Chang. I'm 29 years old. I live in San Francisco. I was homeless there for 3 years while I was pregnant and with my young daughter. I actually just exited homelessness about a year ago after have been in a transitional family shelter for over a year, and then finally securing housing after that. It's a miracle that I was able to do that. I'm grateful for that. I know all the people that who lived with me in the shelter, most of them get pushed out of the city because it's so unaffordable to live there. I want to talk about the criminalization in a much more personal way. We've talked about it costing more money to criminalize homeless people than to provide them with housing. We know we need housing, but that's something that's not going to happen overnight. Criminalization is something that needs to be stopped immediately, and not just because it costs more, because it is inhumane. We treat people in San Francisco the way other people would not even treat their dogs. You don't allow people to sit, lie down, rest, people with disabilities, seniors, veterans, young people, people with any sort of injury. I myself have been cited and arrested for sitting and lying and sleeping, and at a time where I had no choice, nowhere else to go. I slept in various places, mostly unsheltered, from Golden Gate Park to downstairs at the BART station, anywhere you can find, to try and stay safe and warm and dry during the rainy seasons. And at that time, I experienced a lot of harassment, seen a lot of harassment from both SFPD and from the DPW. The way they do their sweeps, they come in, taking all of your belongings, everything you have to keep yourself warm and alive at night. People lose their precious family photos and their medications and their inhalers for asthma and things like that, and it just gets trashed and you never get them back. They spray people with water to get them out of the way. And they told us at the time that it was water, but water looks and smells a certain way, not like chemicals. And I am certain that some of the stuff that they were spraying near us had chemicals in it. We could see the soap suds. And it made people very, very sick. There was another young woman out there the same time that I was, and we were both pregnant. And shortly after the sprayings, she miscarried. And I was terrified that I would lose my baby because of that very same thing. It's inhumane, it's torture. People deserve to be treated better than this, like human beings, all of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Copeland. I represent DOCFA, which is Disabled Rights Group, and SHOC was a committee. And the criminalization of homelessness has got to go, because I've seen police brutalize the homeless population in Sacramento, right by City Hall. And we have a saying, house keys, not handcuffs.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Nikki Jones, and feeling a lot from what folks have been saying. I'm a street outreach worker here in Sacramento with Wind Youth Services. We are, I can speak to the experience of my organization. We are struggling so much. Last week we closed the only adolescent shelter for 12 to 17-year-olds in Sacramento County. We had to close it due to lack of funding. Our shelter wait list for 12 to 17, or for 18 to 24-year-olds is 6 to 9 months long. We watch as the young people that we work with that are living outside, we watch as the quality of life increasingly deteriorates. It just broke my heart to hear about your 38, 39. I'm so sorry. And And so the need for increased funding for youth services, for safety net services in general, but goodness, 1.1 million since '89. Like we need to move forward. We need to recognize the crisis on our hands, and the housing crisis, as well as the crisis of criminalization, the dehumanization of lives of people who have no other choice. And yeah, I missed it if someone talked about people wanting to experience homelessness, but it's not anyone's goal to begin with. And folks are actually torn down over time. You can see that the human spirit can be torn down over time, and a broken system will wear you out. And I think we can all agree, looking at the amount of folks experiencing homelessness, I think we can all agree we have a broken system, and not just a broken emergency response system, but a broken housing system, an economic speculative housing market that makes it so that even middle-class folks are not being able to afford housing these days. And homelessness is on the rise and continuing to be because of this. And so we need to start treating people with respect. Homelessness is a social issue, not a criminal one. We need to act accordingly and give funding where funding is due, right? Funding where it's due.
Hello, my name is Elia Williams, and I'm a Wind Youth Shelter client. And it does take 6 to 9 months to get into the shelter, and there are only 6 beds, and they closed the adolescent shelter for 12 to 17-year-olds, which is really sad because of the lack of funding. They also had to cut back significantly on their counseling department, which would really help provide services for people with mental disabilities. And I feel that they need to increase funding for not just youth, but everybody in general, for like mental health services, housing, and they need to decrease the amount of criminalization that homeless people face. Not just sitting outside or like being on a light row, being at the store, having your service dog in an area. I feel like they should just stop like criminalizing people who are sleeping outside. Like people, I've heard homeless navigators say to other people, oh, they want to be homeless. That's not true. A lot of people like would love to have being housing, and it's like really, really sad.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Tyler Cole, 26. I'm speaking on behalf of Wind Youth Services as well as Tumbleweed. And basically the issues with homelessness, it's ongoing with certain people. Just because you're homeless doesn't mean you have to be a drug addict. You don't have to be crazy. You know, I was off and on homeless for 10 years in my situation. Didn't have any family, no one to turn to. Boom. Got out of my foster service, and I just had no one to look to but youth services, as well as having them give me help. And honestly, if I didn't have their help, I'd probably be in jail at this moment. But we need youth services, pretty much funding for all that stuff, so we could actually look up and be better people instead of going down the downward spiral. So yeah, just ask for them help.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Cole.
Good afternoon, those of you who are left. Really appreciate, like everyone else has said, the opportunity to engage in this discussion and this dialogue. And while there were many really, really important things that were shared on the panels, it does seem like there's been a huge oversight on the sort of organizing of this hearing, as well as the initiative coming out of the Senate, which is, why are we not talking about criminalization? Why are we not addressing what every single homeless person who's been here has talked about that they've experienced, which is criminalization? You know, as we speak right now, people in San Francisco, homeless people who are living on the streets, who are unsheltered, are being swept because we have a 72-hour vacate or get arrested notice that's on the heels of the Super Bowl. That's the enforcement of that is happening at the hands of law enforcement and DPW. So we know that there's going to be so much more property destruction, so much more dehumanization, and so much more citations, debt that homeless people are going to be accumulating due to the fact that they have nowhere else to sleep. Some of the impacts of criminalization that we haven't talked about are the fact that people, once they have warrants that they're not able to pay on their record, are not able to get into affordable housing, are not able to get into any sort of supportive housing. So all of the housing dollars that we're putting in, if we're not also making sure that people's criminalization stops, no one's going to be able to get into housing. If you get onto the top of the list and it turns out you have an unpaid warrant, you're dropped from the housing list, which has been closed for 8 years. So people can't get back on. In addition, people, if you have a criminal status, it makes it almost impossible for you to get employment. And in addition, even in the private housing market, you can't get housing when you have a criminal record. So if we're not talking about this huge elephant in the room, we're ignoring a huge component that's facing homeless Californians and Californians in general when it comes to the concept of ending homelessness. So really encourage you all to get with Senator Lieu, who is taking leadership on this issue with the right to rest, SB 876. This bill should be a part of the initiative that the Senate is putting out, and it should have been talked about at this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eva. I come as an intern from Denmark, and I wasn't planning to speak today. I'm doing my internship as a social worker with the Coalition on Homelessness, so excuse me. But I just feel like I had to share this story for my first outreach this week. I just recently got here, and the first thing that I see is I go to a shelter to speak to the families, and I see a mother with her children, and her young daughter was very sick, was not looking well, and we were there during the daytime, so she should have been to school, and I'm asking her why isn't she at school. She tells me that her daughter got pulled out of school from the teachers themselves because they thought that she looked so ill that she might have been contagious to the other children, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. So they went to the ER, and the ER couldn't diagnose her with anything other than the distress from her mother being homeless and the monster that they had faced on the streets. And I just want to say that every time all the homeless people we're talking about here, so many of them have children, and the children are so very much damaged from this every day. So just remember that this is your future as well, and don't be short-sighted. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva.
Good afternoon. My name is Carol Moss, and I want to just add one thing. When you take your money and put it into affordable housing, please make sure that it is not just affordable, but that it is accessible. Many people have difficulties in getting into their homes because they're either in a walker, cane, or wheelchair. So please add that into your scenario when you do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. Thank you to everyone who sat through this lengthy hearing and for offering us your thoughts and your concerns. Recognize this was a very complex issue when we began the hearing, but your comments have helped us become better informed as we craft our policy this year and as bills go through both the policy committees and also through the budget discussions as well. So we have no other business before us. We are adjourned.